Alright then, let's see if this can record correctly this time. So yeah, this is Etrian Odyssey 3, but there's not so much LP in the game right now, although I would like to if I ever find time to LP a game like this. But for now, this is basically an excuse to talk about dungeon crawler RPGs. Now, the thing about dungeon crawlers is for a while I wasn't really into them. I either ignored them or avoided them for various reasons. Now, one thing I should say, what I consider to be a dungeon crawl, I could be wrong about this, mind you, is depends upon how much the dungeon actually matters to the premise of the game. For example, Final Fantasy IV has dungeons, but they're really just a means to an end. You're basically only really going through them to advance the plot of the game, in a sense. So you're not in that fire dungeon to explore, you're in there to find the crystal, or the princess, or a giant chicken, or whatever. It's just a means to an end. Whereas in a game like Etrian Odyssey, your entire existence is about the dungeon you're exploring. On Class of Heroes, you're basically in a school to basically explore dungeons and so forth. So based on how important the dungeon is to everything. Now, what actually got me into dungeon crawlers is the following. You had at first a game called Unlimited Saga, which yes, I know people don't care much for, but I enjoyed it overall. But the point I'm gonna get out of Unlimited Saga is some of the things I experienced in it, now that I think back on them, were dungeon crawler like. And not only that, the game made more accepting of things that might not be my preference. A good example is towns that are basically just menus. Let's call them menu towns. If I could accept menu towns in a game like Unlimited Saga, I couldn't exactly forfeit about menu towns existing in games like Etrian Odyssey or Class of Heroes or Wizardry. Likewise, it got me used to the idea of having abilities where you actually interact with the dungeon itself as opposed to just being used in battles, which made some of the abilities I saw in Class of Heroes, like the float spell and so forth, make more sense because hey, you're interacting with the dungeon with those abilities, so it works for the most part. Fast forward to the time of 2012 when I tried a demo of a game called Labyrinth of Lost Souls, which was one of the Wizardry games made in Japan. And the demo was actually kind of addictive. I found myself changing my character's class, getting back up to level 5, exploring the area again, and I decided to get the full game. And overall, while it is a bit grindy, there's only so much to it. It was still neat to have a party and go through the dungeon. And then, of course, this led me to thinking, hey, Class of Heroes for the PSP is only $7.50 during this PSN sale. Second here. And not only that, it has certain appeals to it, which will make it easy to get into the game, such as anime style portraits, and who doesn't want a fairy in their party, or a sprite, depending on what name you prefer. So basically, I figured it was worth a shot, and of course I got a bunch of other skins during that sale, some of which I still need to play, but we'll get around to them eventually. But in any case, because I enjoyed Class of Heroes, I figured, hey, Etrian Odyssey, it can't hurt to actually give the game a try. And I kind of avoided the game thinking the map making would be too tedious and annoying, and the game would be too hard for me. Turns out I was completely wrong. about that. After again, Etrian Odyssey 1 and trying, I rushed out to get Etrian Odyssey 2 and 3 before finishing 1, and Etrian Odyssey 4 became the main reason I got a 3DS. There were other reasons, but at the time, Etrian Odyssey 4 became the primary reason, and as soon as Etrian Odyssey Untold was announced, I had to get it. Yes, it's a remake, but I'm not one of those people who auto-hate remakes, and plus it has some new stuff to it, so go figure. And for those who like the Persona games, if you are really that against remakes, remember I got Beta and I might get Persona 4 Gold in the far future, so there. Actually, Persona 1 almost scared me away from dungeon crawlers or first-person perspective games because I kept getting lost in that hospital dungeon. I just gave up on the game. One thing that helps some of the dungeon crawlers I've been playing lately is maps in the game. You either draw on your own map in an Etrian Odyssey game, and the more you draw of it, the easier it is to get through it, or you have a map spell or a map item that fills out as you travel a dungeon and class of heroes, so it becomes much easier to get through. So the problem of going in circles and getting lost just isn't there anymore. But yeah, I can still get lost, but I have at least have a way of getting back to town. Not to mention, in Etrian Odyssey, there's an item you get which allows you to warp back to town instantly. As long as you carry one, you're fine. Part of the appeal of the games is mapping the dungeon or exploring it at least and deciding what party you want, which classes do you use, what skills to learn, and so forth. Make a huge difference overall. Of course, how much of a difference depends upon the game you're playing and the catches to it. But one of the things I learned about playing a game like Etrian Odyssey or Dungeon Crawl in general, you're really not meant to complete the dungeon in one sitting. You're supposed to go through part of it, say, after retreat and do more of it later, and you're actually supposed to use your skills. It's amazing how much easier a game can be when you do more than just do the normal attack all the time. Now, one of the fun parts of Etrian Odyssey specifically is you only have so many points to work with. So, do you want a fewer number of skills but make them strong? Or do you want to have a greater number of skills but make them weaker? Those are the things you have to decide, as well as what classes you use and how many characters to level up. Probably fastest just to work on 5 characters only, but if you have one character of each class you rotate, that gives you more variety of skills to use. Or heck, have 2 characters of the same class. Suddenly, instead of having one character have to level up 2 sets of skills, you can divide the work between them. So you could have a Zodiac that's more fire-based and another one that's more ice-based, depending upon what you want. But that's the other thing to keep in mind. Some dungeon crawlers do have a stronger focus on story, like Unchained Blades apparently, but most of the time from what I can tell, you're basically playing at generic. Now that doesn't mean the games have no story, it's just that the story is less about your party and more about the characters you interact with. Which is a big mistake people make. Just because your own party isn't saying 100 lines of dialogue every second, isn't in the center of the universe, doesn't mean a game has no story. It just means the focus has changed. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Yeah, I'm basically going in circles for auto battle to make it simpler. Now, granted, just because I'm enjoying some dungeon crawls doesn't mean I'll enjoy all of them. I have yet to get Elman's original Demon Gaze Unchained Blades, Deception 2, which might be a dungeon crawler, and while they might have, or in Dark Spire 2 is another game I haven't gone yet, while they all might look interesting to various degrees, I can't say when I enjoy them too, I find them terrible. Because sometimes the reason you like a game is because the elements it has that may not be present in all of the games of the genre. That's another key. To get into a genre, you just need to find the right game. I mean, not Element's original, Wizardry helped me get into Dungeon Crawl, so you could say it was the right game for me to try, although in theory I might have gone into them where I had started with Class of Heroes or Etrian Odyssey instead. But at the same time, there's probably a dungeon crawl out there that if I had tried it first, or basically used to judge the genre would have scared me away because it would have had problems that annoy me. Like maybe I wouldn't care for the cast of characters, I'd find them stupid if it was a story-based dungeon crawler. Or maybe, for example, I would find the battle system tedious, it might have boring looking, more so you'd expect as a game to be. The point is that there would be problems. And some of the stuff that I might enjoy about the games that got me into the genre might not have been present in the game. So for example, I like the anime style portraits this game has for the characters. So having a game lacking them would mean that the game wasn't able to rely on as a selling point for it. But as I've said before, or might have said, I can't remember, it's basically the secret to a game like this is not to do it in one sitting, map part of it, retreat and save, and to actually use your skills on occasion. Not that I'm using them much, but my characters have gained a few levels, and I'm not really actually trying to go for the dungeon. I'm just basically using it as a backdrop. Of course, the other problem dungeon crawlers and trying which one to get out of other games to get. Still gotta get Fire Emblem Awakening, for example, Bravely Default, and so forth. And there's also anime and manga to get. And these games can take a while, so it could be a long while before I find out if the games I mentioned before and games I forgot about might be worth getting. At all, if I should just avoid them. We'll see how that goes. But the basic point of this video is that dungeon crawlers have gone from a genre for me to avoid to a genre for me to pay attention to because of certain games I've played overall. It also helps I like job classes, and in a sense, Etrian Odyssey, Class of Heroes, in which we do have job classes involved. Maybe not to the extent of Final Fantasy Tactics and so forth, but you're still choosing professions, deciding what character to use and so forth. So there's that too. I should probably finish the Etrian Odyssey 2 and 3 and Class of Heroes too, but some tell me I should get some other games finished first. Not to mention the classic mode of Etrian Odyssey Untold needs to be played too. Unfortunately, only one save in that game. Someday I'll just give up my story mode save. I'll have to get a digital copy of the game for a second save. Wonderful. Okay, this has gone long enough. Hopefully, I've recorded has come out properly this time. So yeah, dungeon crawls are worth playing. I would look forward to more classic heroes in the future, more Etrian Odyssey. Maybe I should play some other Witcher games, and basically see about other series to try, like Demon Gates, for example. And as for whether or not actually I'll be a dungeon crawler, we'll see. It can be time consuming, so I have to be careful about that. Plus, some of them I want to finish for myself before I even consider that. But yeah, this pretty much covers it. And yes, the characters in my party, as mentioned possibly before, are named after people from Aikatsu. And when I do the Etrian Untold Classic Mode 1, it will be Aikatsu based. Or maybe I can change one of my current parties in Etrian Odyssey 3 to Aikatsu characters. I don't know yet. But that pretty much covers it. And in terms of other stuff, that can be an update later. But this has basically been talking about dungeon crawls. I hope this recorded correctly. If I upload, it probably did. So bye for now.